We come now to one of the most famous passages in the entire New Testament, a passage associated with Christian weddings very commonly because it's all about love. The hymn to love, as it's sometimes called. And as you may know, because I think it's fairly well known in Christian circles, there are various Greek words that could all be translated as love. Philia, for instance, refers to the kind of love had between friends. Philadelphia, the kind of love had between brothers. Storge, parental love. And then here in chapter 13, Paul uses the word agape. Agape throughout the entire New Testament refers to the kind of love that is totally benevolent and selfless and unconditional love. It's the kind of love that God has for mankind. So famously in John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. That gift of God to the world of his Son Jesus Christ is the demonstration, the chief demonstration of God's selfless, benevolent, unconditional love for mankind. That's agape. So that's the word that Paul uses here. And then in Romans 5:5, Paul says that that same love has been poured into our hearts by the gift of the Holy Spirit. So it's the love of God that's given to us that enables us to love with divine love. It enables us to love like God. That is to say, in a benevolent, selfless, and unconditional way. Verses 1 through 3. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. I don't think that the Apostle Paul here means to convey the idea that he speaks in a whole bunch of languages that are both human and angelic, or that he actually understands all mysteries through his prophetic gift. But rather, I think he's using hyperbole to make the point that love is essential to the Christian life in a way that the spiritual gifts are not essential. The reason I think that is because of what verse 3 says. He says, though I give my body to be burned, but have not love. So we know that Paul, in fact, had not and did not give his body to be burned. So I think he's using the first person here. He says I, but he's speaking hypothetically to refer to any Christian who's gifted with some spiritual gift in a unique or particular way, but at the same time does not have love. And that spiritually gifted person who is loveless is nothing, Paul says. So you may think that you are very spiritual because you speak in tongues all the time, or you may think you're very spiritual because you are very generous with your money, or because you have a very strong prophetic gift and you're able to hear from the Lord very clearly. But if you don't have love, you're not actually spiritual in the true sense of that word. You're not spiritual in the Christian sense of that word. To be spiritual is to be filled with the Holy Spirit. And as Paul again says in Romans 5:5, the gift of the Holy Spirit is given to us so that we may love, principally. So that we may love God and love other people, so that we may fulfill the commandments, the chief of which, as Jesus says, is that we love one another. A new commandment, he says, that ye love one another as I have loved you. And I think we could expand upon this. We could say that, expanding on the understanding of all mysteries, I'm sure Paul would say the same about theological knowledge. So if a Christian knows the Bible inside and out, let's say he's got tons of verses memorized and he can recall them all the time and has a profound grasp of systematic and historical theology, even if he has those things, but he does not have love, it amounts to nothing. Verses 4 through 7. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy, love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. As I was reflecting on these 4 verses this week, I thought, wow, this would make a great examination of conscience. So If you're reflecting on your own life in relation to the law of God, we know from the New Testament that the law of God is summarized in love, the command to love God and love other people. So if you want to know how you have stood up in relation to the commandment to love, it's good to reflect on these 4 verses here. So notice first that none of these characteristic features of love are sentimental. They're all behavioral. We see what love does and does not do, or what the loving person does or does not do. So love suffers long. It patiently endures annoyances or grievances or hurts. It overlooks a transgression. It's slow to anger. Love is kind. So it's not merely patient with annoyances or grievances or hurts, but it pays those things back with kindness. Love does not envy. To envy is to want something that doesn't belong to you, that somebody else possesses, and to possess that thing in such a way that they actually don't possess it. So it's born out of a sense of inferiority. And then we see here too that love does not parade itself, it's not puffed up, it doesn't behave arrogantly. So here we have the opposite of the sense of inferiority. We have the sense of superiority. And love does neither of those things. It doesn't act out of inferiority, and it doesn't act out of a sense of superiority. Love does not behave rudely. It is attentive to social propriety. It seeks to act appropriately. It's not inappropriate. It acts or seeks to act courteously. Love is not self-seeking, and it's not provoked. Love, it's not touchy or super sensitive. It's not ready to take offense at the slightest provocation, real or imagined. Love thinks no evil. It does not let the mind dwell on wrongs that have been done. Again, real or imagined. It does not hold on to resentment or grudges. Love does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. Sin is not something to be delighted in, either in public or in privacy of our homes. Sometimes, too, the way that we speak about church or institutional politics or scandals tends to rejoice in iniquity. So love does not rejoice in hearing about those things or talking about those things. What love delights in, rather, is the truth. Love bears all things, it believes, it hopes, it endures all things. It is generous and confident and open and persevering. Verses 8 through 13. Love never fails, but whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part will be done away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know, just as I am also known. And now abide faith, hope, love, these 3, but the greatest of these is love. Okay, we see here that prophecies, tongues, and knowledge will come to an end, but love never ends. So at least some of these spiritual gifts, and I think it's safe to say that all of the spiritual gifts will come to an end, but love will never end. The question becomes, well, what is that end point? And Paul identifies that end point as when the perfect has come. Well, what is that state of perfection? He doesn't tell us directly, but I think he alludes to it in various ways. And I think basically what he means is the future state of glory, what we call the beatific vision of God in heaven. And the reason I say that is because we see that the state of perfection entails a spiritual knowledge that is not clouded or obscured in any way. So it's that future state of knowledge is contrasted with the present state of knowledge that we have that's only partial. But the future is a face-to-face vision of the fullness of the realities of the faith. So I think that for that reason, this must be the beatific vision of heaven. Why is that? Because God is there seen face-to-face. He's seen and known directly or immediately, meaning there's nothing that mediates our knowledge of him, whether prophecies or tongues, whether preaching or teaching, even the Bible itself. All of those are put away in the very presence of God himself in heaven. And Paul likens this present time in which the spiritual gifts are necessary to childhood. But in the maturity of the life of the world to come, these things will be put away. Even faith and hope, as central as they are to the Christian life now, will pass away in the world to come. They will no longer be necessary because of the immediate sight and knowledge of God. But love will continue forever, for there all of the redeemed will love God into eternity.